Hello, everyone. So we are live now. Office at the Inter-American Development Bank in Washington, D.C. My name is Ari Beitler, and I welcome everyone to this webinar this afternoon. With us, Mark Lopez, the United States of America Director at the Inter-American Development Bank, and Fabricio Perti, the Chief of the Trade and Investment Division at the bank. And we're going to talk about how to promote business opportunities, how to promote trade and investment, and how the IDB can be a part of that role between Latin America, the Caribbean, and the United States. So welcome, Mark, and welcome, Fabricio, and your floor.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I've never done this kind of a format, so it'll be a first for me. Fabricio is here. He has done this many more times. He's also a lot more charming than I am, so you're going to get a good sequencing between sort of boring me, and then you'll get an upgrade when we transfer over to Fabricio. So I think we've got a good conversation. I look forward to your questions. So I am the United States Executive Director to the IDB, which means that I represent the U.S. economic interests, the U.S. commercial interests, the U.S. development interests in the IDB. I'll talk a little bit about the structure of the presentation I have. We'll go over a little bit about the general the scope of the IDB, which many of you may know. In some ways, I'm speaking to a bit of a blind audience, so I hope this is useful to all of you. But we will be able to drill down a little more narrowly when it comes to questions. So I know that we have a lot of U.S. companies on the line, which is the primary audience for our work. But I know that we also have others from the Conecta Americas network. And so to all of you, I say bienvenidos también. También queremos ser su socio preferido, queremos trabajar junto con ustedes y esperamos que ustedes puedan incorporar nuevas tecnologías americanas, experiencia americana, tecnología, etc. Entonces, with everyone, we have a message, and I think we look forward to drilling down and working with you. I've got a couple colleagues in the room who are off camera, but that I will introduce and I'll talk about, which is sort of the best way to connect with our office. The main one being Matthew Hilgendorf, and I'll give you his contact information at the end of this. So now you should have and I'm going to go through the slides pretty quickly, so I'm going to rely on my partner here to see if he can keep up. But basically, the bank's been around for 40 years. It's about $14 billion in financing. Go to the next slide. There are 48 member countries, 26 borrowers, 22 non-borrowers, and you'll see the breakdown there. So we've got folks that are non-borrowing member countries throughout Europe, as well as Asia, and then obviously strong footing in the Americas. Our shareholding, as you'll see there, is about is a slight favor overall of the borrowing side. So you've got a little more than 50% are the regional members. That allows them to really own the bank and to own the direction of the bank. And you'll see as well that in the rest of the shareholding, the United States plays a very large role. So we have about 30% of the bank as an individual shareholder. The next largest shareholder is about 10% as individual countries. So our role here is quite strong, which I think reflects the history of the institution, but also obviously our interests in the region and our interests across the board from a development standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and with a strong set of neighbors, we obviously want to be very much engaged. The IDB group, which you may know, is made up of 3 different institutions. The IDB side, which is primarily sovereign lending to governments, as well as the Inter-American Investment Corporation, which just went through a restructuring, and they're working on the private sector and private sector lending in the region. They are between 2 and 3 billion is their work load, their lending envelope this year, and they're trying to increase that closer to the 3 billion side. And then the Multilateral Investment Fund, which is often called the MIF, and in Spanish is FOMIN. So that's about $85 million a year in terms of small grants and micro enterprise work throughout the region. The overview of the IDB business overall, the next slide, you'll see about half of the work So first, there's about the sum total of all the public procurement is about $800 billion. So that's the large market that we'd like you to have access to. Obviously, the IDB lending represents a small portion of that work in the sort of single-digit percentages, but that is what we are trying to get you access to, and where we want you to be able to engage. The regional breakdown, as you'll see in the map with the photo and the woman washing her hands, yes, you'll see about half is from Southern Cone, 18% from the Andean region, Central America and the Dominican Republic is about a quarter, and so on. So that's sort of the regional distribution. And as I said before, 98% of the procurement of the region is not narrowly within the IDB scope. So we're trying to get you into this sort of business line and then able to compete directly with public procurement efforts. And so on the next slide, we're talking about procurement roles and responsibilities, which is essentially the point there is the IDB is really helping governments, sovereigns with their procurement processes. So when you want to be a part of the business line of the bank, you're going to work directly with governments in the region and their procurement systems. And the bank is there to help those systems and to help support that the work is carried out in a competitive manner. And the engagement of the IDB varies depending on the strength of the systems in country. But at the end of the day, these are the government procurement systems that they're putting out the RFPs, and you will be responding directly to them as opposed to responding to the bank. So that's just a little bit of the basics on the bank. The IDB, of course, does not select the contractors. These are the government decisions, but we are there to help ensure that they're done in a competitive way. And then the four different ways that you could work with the bank. Obviously, the primary contractor is the most self-explanatory. These are the large-scale infrastructure providers, engineering firms, construction firms, subcontractors, obviously anyone helping the contractor carry out that role. You have suppliers, and then you have consultants to the IDB, which are anywhere from environmental specialists that are doing environmental analysis, feasibility studies, or legal work on due diligence, project preparation, that sort of a thing. So that's sort of the broad range of ways you could work. So how can we help you? And so the way that our office fits into this piece is we have a team from the Department of Commerce that works with our office very closely, with Matthew Hilgendorf, whose email I'll show you here at the end, and Barbara White, who has companies with counseling, with market intelligence, networking, getting you in the building essentially, and getting you connected to the people that I think would be helpful for you to understand what kind of opportunities might be out there. For example, we would help set up a video conference to connect with IDB reps in the region. We could work on conference calls. We could get you in the building physically to do brown bags to understand so the bank has an opportunity to understand what your business line is, but also just to get you a chance to meet face to face and understand a little bit more about what the bank is doing. Some of the current U.S. companies active with the bank, for example, are a consulting company in Haiti that's had many years of working with subsequent contracts on natural resource analysis. Obviously, there are suppliers and subcontractors as a part of that overall business model. And so our efforts here with U.S. companies is to work to expand the reach of those companies and to have them have access to the opportunities here as much as possible. We sometimes companies ask us, do you help companies win? And my answer there is yes, in the sense that we help you play. If you don't play, you can't win. Obviously, we are confident in the U.S. company's ability to compete well for these contracts, and we want to make sure that you have every access to the opportunities and are able to get the information you need so that you know how to engage, when, and with whom to engage. Our general sense of the success factors with respect to companies that are able to do this well, and that's for the next slide, which is basically be persistent, be smart about how you spend your time, with engaging with the bank. Use our embassies downrange as well. Use offices back here at the State Department, obviously the Department of Commerce, both in the offices here and also with the commercial offices in the embassies. So it depends on the country that you're in for the specifics, but obviously the spirit of it is don't be shy and err on the side of overly communicative and overly engaging with respect to the interpersonal piece. And our office, like I said, is here to help you do that. And sort of the visual there, you'll see some of the websites to be able to connect. And the spirit here is that our door is open to serve you. You'll see an actual photo of our open door. If you couldn't visualize what an open door looks like, that's not only a open door, that is the open door. And you'll see the president, the vice president's photos on the walls if you had any doubt. And so that's where we are. We're here to help, and I am here to answer any questions you have. And then obviously you'll see Matthew and Barbara's contact information there, and they will be there for follow-up with you moving forward. So let me stop there, and I'm happy to take questions, and I'm also happy to hand it over to my colleague here, Fabrizio, who will talk more about Connect Americas.
Great, Mark. Thanks so much. That was a great presentation on the IDB. I must say that Mark, the whole team, they're really nice, really proactive, really open door. I've experienced that, being from management, leading the trade and investment division at the bank, and we work very closely with your team. And this is an example. This type of presentation, this webinar is an example of this openness that here at the bank we have with the U.S. Executive Director's Office, and also with our team. We have the trade and investment division at the bank. Integration, economic integration, is part of the main core of the bank. From its genesis, it's one of its main pillars, and that integration, of course, has evolved with the times and with technology, and as part of our agenda of what we predicate and what we tell the countries and our borrowing member countries within the operations that we do in trade and integration to use technology and to empower entrepreneurs with technology. We kind of did it ourselves. We kind of showed that with Connect Americas. We're very privileged to be here in Washington with so many shareholding countries at the bank, and it's being such a global institution. So I'm going to talk about Connect Americas as a tool for you, the entrepreneurs, to seize opportunities. So Adi, to my left, I can pass the slides if you want.
Yeah.
And Adi, of course, we can't see him here, but you probably all know Adi. He doesn't have a lot of hair, but he has a lot of energy and a lot of good ideas always. And he runs Connect Americas on a daily basis, along with with a team that is also very, very dynamic. So we like to say that entrepreneurs all around the world, and the U.S. in particular, they have dreams that are really in common, and that is to discover an opportunity, to close an actual deal, and to grow their businesses and their companies and generate development and grow these opportunities. And this doesn't happen by art of magic, abracadabra, and suddenly I close a deal, suddenly I export. It takes a lot of hard work. And this hard work is at the core of seizing these opportunities, and it entails information. It entails contacts. Exporting is very knowledge intensive, as you all know. Has a lot of information behind those exports, and those contacts are key. And those things just don't happen by art of magic. At the same time, if we look at technology and the internet in Latin America and the Caribbean, it's about 50% of the people are connected, and we are using also, of course, in the U.S., but also in our region, we're using social media and social networks. Actually, of the 10 most connected countries in the world, 5 in terms of use of social media, in terms of average hours per visitor per month, 5 are in Latin America. And this means that people are not only sending WhatsApps and Facebook messages, they're doing business online. They're seizing technology for e-commerce. And in the last 10 years, 40-fold increase in e-commerce in terms of sales in the Latin American and Caribbean region, and to $70 billion in 2013, and that is expected to triple, to more than triple, to more than 200 billion by 2017. This entails opportunities for the SMEs of the US, of Canada, of Central America, of South America, of North America. And that is something that is at the heart of what we're doing here. Because looking at our region in particular, Latin America and the Caribbean, but also that is true of other regions and other countries like the US, the small and medium, mid-sized companies, the SMEs, as we call them, they're not exporting as much. Only about 13% export in Latin America, compared to numbers that are more than 30% in Europe and more than 50% in countries in Asia, East Asia, like, for example, in Malaysia. And then the exports are concentrated. The typical Latin American exporter exports 2 products to one country, and the typical Northern European exporter exports 7 products to 10 countries. And so our exports are concentrated both in terms of goods, the quantity of goods, and the markets. And we think that it's very important for youth entrepreneurs, for your companies to export, because our research, and it has been in-depth research that we've done, it concludes that those companies that do export pay higher wages, their sales increase faster, they are more productive, and they're basically growing faster. They're basically better companies in many ways. Through exports, they manage to seize all these great benefits. And we have also posed the question, what is holding our companies back in terms of exporting? And we find, you have told us, the companies and the small and mid-sized companies of the region, having done many focus groups, many interviews, you have told us that there are 3 main barriers to exports. One is the lack of trustworthy contacts or connections. And the multinational corporations, the multi-Latinas, as they're called in Latin America, they have their sophisticated departments of intelligence, or they can hire big firms in order to develop those networks. The small and mid-sized companies, they don't have that luxury. They don't have those resources. And the right contacts, the trustworthy contacts, the reliable and stable contacts are key for them. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is information, as we were saying before. Today, knowledge and information pervades a good. Today, we buy organic, gluten-free, fair trade, and that's just talking about food. In manufacturing, there are so many, there's a myriad of technical specifications that are out there. And that is information. That is information-intensive exports. And that information is very dispersed in the internet. There's a myriad out there. And for the entrepreneurs, it's not easy to go to one place and find this reliable and key information. The third barrier that we found that youth entrepreneurs have told us is the access to credit, the access to financing. That is always, of course, a barrier, especially for the smaller companies. There is more risk aversion on the part of banks to lend to smaller companies. And so we find there are 3 basic elements to take the leap. And so to those problems, or to those barriers, we didn't end in the analysis. We didn't, okay, you diagnosed this, how interesting. No, we reacted with an initiative. And the initiative has been Connect Americas, to create an online network of companies from around the world and provide them those 3 services. To those 3 barriers, we say 3 words. We say connect, learn, and finance. Connect, because in Connect Americas, we provide contacts, reliable, trustworthy companies that have been verified, entrepreneurs that have told us their information, and we have verified them. So that we're addressing that aspect. We're also, as I'll tell you later on, we're connecting you with contacts from around the world and from around Latin America, potential partners, buyers and suppliers, but also with opportunities, with business opportunities. We have companies today in Connect Americas from around the hemisphere and really around the world that are buying goods and services in Connect Americas. Companies like General Electric, which are publishing their purchasing announcements in Connect Americas. Companies from China that are purchasing and putting their purchasing announcements in Connect Americas, like Alibaba. Companies from Latin America, like Café Brit, which are publishing those procurement announcements in Connect Americas. And also, as Mark said before, the governments, including the IDB procurement processes. All the IDB procurement that is in the approximate amount feasible for a small and mid-sized company, ranging anywhere from 200,000 to $3+ million. That is published in Connect Americas in a very easy manner, trilingual to start, English, Spanish, Portuguese, with a brief description. So right away, you can tell if your company can fit that profile. Then, of course, you will have to fill the applications and the technical requirements in order to apply to the bidding processes, whatever the procurement mechanism may be. But the information there is really easy. It's a snapshot. We're working on bringing tutorials to the table to help you and guide you through the procurement processes, because there are so many opportunities out there. And we believe that we have to maximize the transparency of the information so that we reach also the small and mid-sized players and not only the bigger companies. I have nothing against big companies. Big companies are part of Connect Americas, but we believe there are multiplicity of opportunities for smaller companies as well. And sometimes not only in terms of knowledge, in terms of niche knowledge that they have, and they can be just a better fit for many contracts. Learn to respond to that information barrier. We have a lot of online open courses in Connect Americas, very practical, how to use internet to export, logistics opportunities in the region in order to export, in the sphere of food exports, the sanitary and phytosanitary requirements, and all very, very practical courses that you can take them whenever you want. By the way, all of this is free. So if you haven't registered, please register. We don't charge for any of this. This is a public good that we're bringing in order to promote trade. And not only those courses, which you will find very practical and which are very popular, but also information from 200+ chambers of commerce and trade promotion institutions from around the world, including the US, in which we integrate our website with their websites through the APIs, as they're called, and you have access to that information. And that's not just a generic link to the page of commerce.gov or to the page of ProChile or to the page of the Chamber of Commerce and Services of Santiago de Chile. No, it's our algorithms recognize your word searches and guide you to the pieces of information provided by those partners, which we call our local partners, that are already embedded in Connect Americas. So we don't just guide you to a generic link. We guide you to very specific information regarding your sector of interest. And if you don't find it, send us an email, because we're there to help and we're there to listen to our users, and we really have a culture of that. I can attest to Ari and the team's passion to put the user at the centerpiece of Connect Americas. And finance, last but definitely not least, is first the bank. We're a bank, the IDB, so we provide lending to direct lending through our private sector, of course, arm to small and mid-sized companies. Also, indirect lending through national development banks, through our public sector arm, and many lines of technical assistance for a quality certification, for access to finance, etc. So those is regarding mainly the borrowing member countries, although foreign companies like US companies can entail in associations, in ventures, in joint ventures with companies from Latin America and have access to those lines of technical assistance. If a company from Uruguay in the software sector wants to develop an innovation in association with a company from California, the government provides a direct technical assistance to that joint venture. So those lines of technical assistance are not only exclusive to the companies from our region, and the same, of course, with trade finance from the private banks, which are linked to Connect Americas in the finance pillar. So to those three challenges, we set 3 words and 3 solutions, and we're trying to really develop that. We're not a technology company. We're not in Silicon Valley. We're in Washington, D.C. But we've partnered with world champions in the different sectors which Connect Americas include. From the beginning, the 4 anchor partners in Connect Americas are the companies that you see here on the screen. In technology, Google. In logistics, DHL. In the finance area, Visa, and in e-commerce, Alibaba.com. We're very happy to also say and announce that in the logistics and shipping area in particular, Maersk has also joined, and in technology and in social media, Facebook. So these are 2 companies that are also have been joining Connect Americas. What does that mean? This is not just words on a screen. This means these companies have lent their ideas, their vision, hours of their engineers or logistics managers or just their staff to designing Connect Americas, to being a part of the Connect Americas experience and of the Connect Americas team. You also have access to special benefits, discounts in AdWords, for example, that Google provides to our users, access to certain services like DHL only does to their clients and also to the users of Connect Americas, like the logistics calculator, which calculates all your logistics costs for shipping, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to look for those benefits which we announce in Connect Americas. As I said, we have more than 200 public and private organizations supporting the internationalization of companies that are part of the Connect Americas network and whose information is embedded in our platform. And just to give you some idea of numbers and dimensions, we launched 2.5 years ago. Mark was there in Bahia and in Sauipe, and 2.5 years ago. And we already have more than 900,000 unique visitors from 180 countries. Those are visitors that didn't just press connectamericas.com, that actually have visited the platform, have surfed through a platform, and are accessing many things that you don't have to be a registered user for in order to access. Then we have 70,000 registered users. Those are very intensive users of the platform. We recommend you to be a registered user. It doesn't take that much time, and you will have access to everything, to the contacts, to the courses, to the benefits, and it only takes a little time to register. So we're really happy with those numbers. Those numbers compare well to other social media platforms at the beginning, and we will be very happy to get the first 1 million visitors, hopefully later this month, if everything goes well. And so through Connect Americas, more than $110 million in actual deals have been closed. Connect Americas and the business-to-business trade fairs that we organize are very much linked. So the virtual and physical experience is kind of seamless in that sense. So you have access through Connect Americas to our various trade and investment events. We always urge you to go physically, LAC flavors for the food sector, the outsourcing forum that we have each year for the services sector, and we've done a special one in Miami for U.S. companies actually building the Americas for the infrastructure sector. So we announced those events, and we urge you to be there. Again, they're free. You probably have to get there, of course, but once you're there, we organize matchmaking meetings, and we provide a large network of contacts. These events in the private sector, in the market, you have to pay thousands of dollars to really access this type of event that we organize, and they're for free with the team that we organize them. And they're also part of a virtual physical continuum, as we like to say. More than $2 billion in what companies, this is numbers that the companies have told us, that they're expected to close. And so these numbers may be underestimating, actually, the actual numbers, but these are reported numbers from surveys that we run that have been generated through Connect Americas. And we like to tell you what others are talking and are saying about Connect Americas, like Rodrigo Olivares from Chile. He's a software engineer, and he said that I found Connect Americas very easy. In 3 days, I was able to set up my profile and find my first partner in another country. And then we have Rachel Ortegui from Ecoinca, Peru. Thanks to the business meetings offered by Connect Americas, I got to know several companies and now I export my Kiwicha quinoa to the US and Europe. Remember, this is not only exports from the Latin America to the rest of the world. This is exports, imports, investment, inward, outward. This is the whole mix. So that is something that we want to be very clear and adamant about. Tanya Munoz from La Chunga, Mexico, and her goods are in the Brit, has bought them via the business opportunities offered by Connect Americas. I contacted the Brit group, Cafe Brit, and their products are being sold throughout their stores at airports. We saw some of their products at the airport in Mexico City a couple of weeks ago, so we're very happy there. And Martin Turcati from Uruguay in the engineering sector, he says that we were able to close an important deal. It's a serious and safe platform, makes it possible to offer services and products and to make contact with potential clients. What are we doing in 2016? Sort of the last part of the presentation. As we were saying before, business opportunities. We are publishing business opportunities. We have many companies that are buying in Connect Americas, that are putting their purchasing announcements there, and we plan to increase that in the near future. We have very big players, and many of these purchasing opportunities entail joint ventures from companies in the region. Many of these purchasing opportunities cannot be seized by one company in particular, so those we find are really interesting. And of course, those also include the government procurement opportunities that are published in Connect Americas, to which the US companies, of course, are very much interested in, and we want to make it easy for them. Then something that we initiated this year is the virtual matchmaking. We ran a sort of a beta and experiment of matchmaking through Connect Americas. We developed the technology and it worked, and we're very glad it did. It was a small setting, about 20 buyers, 100 suppliers, and it did work. So we plan to scale that and really to try to make those virtual matchmaking meetings more often and bigger, and maybe thematic. Maybe we'll do one for US companies in particular. We plan to charge a little bit for that because that covers the cost. We're not for profit here, so that's very important to say, but we need to be sustainable. So we plan to start for this type of service, charging something really very limited to cover basically the operating cost to run those activities. And then finally, certainly last but not least, we launched Connect Americas for Women, and we're very proud of that. And it's a portal within Connect Americas specifically geared to women entrepreneurs. Not only women-owned business, women-managed businesses, procurement opportunities that are out there, especially for women entrepreneurs, training courses, and this we have done also in partnership with many organizations that work with women entrepreneurship and women exporters, and we plan to make this very, very relevant, important part of the core business, and to really make it grow, because there is a gap there. There's undoubtedly a gap also in the export sector for women entrepreneurs. So I think with that, I finish. We'd like to say, here at Connect Americas, to take the world with your hands, and it would be with your hands above the mouse. And we welcome any questions.
Okay, so I have a couple here already, but let's switch to your view so that people can get involved in this conversation. So I guess the first question goes to both of you. What are the most promising sectors that, in your experience, are likely to continue growing commercially between the U.S. and Latin America and or Caribbean?
Well, I mean, it's a very interesting question, and undoubtedly the U.S. Is the second Spanish-speaking country in the world. That market is huge, of the Hispanic market in the U.S., and is growing. That entails opportunities for exports from Latin America to the U.S., but also for U.S. firms to produce many of these nostalgic markets. For example, I'm from Uruguay. We like dulce de leche, you know, the milk jelly. It's already almost streamlined here in the U.S. with Häagen-Dazs and all the flavors that have dulce de leche. I buy dulce de leche made in the U.S. You know, so from Nestle, which they make, which is amazing, by the way. And there's so many varieties with yerba mate. Now, Guayaquil from Paraguay, that's a partnership with a company in California. We have the mate herbs out there, and so anything food, I think, is very interesting. Back and forth. I mean, food is very important, especially value-added food. That's a big part of our trade. And undoubtedly, technology. The U.S. has an edge in technology, and there's a lot of innovation out there. And the innovation is not only, I think, for the big players to capture those markets. It's for the small and mid-sized company, not only from Silicon Valley, from all over the U.S., that can be looking at software, at animation, at video games, looking at the region, doing joint ventures with the region. So all the services area is growing. It was resilient to the crisis. Actually, both food and technology were the value-added food, not commodities. Value-added, processed, were the sectors that were quite resilient to export. So those would be my.
All right.
And I would echo a lot of what Fabrizio said and say, I mean, for me, some of the exciting areas are still around the services, the innovation piece. We've seen young people in the region develop new technologies and build on and make a local version of something that may have started outside of the region, maybe in the US, maybe in Europe. But I think what's been fun is that when you have in some of the countries an education system that still isn't providing kind of a mainstream typical education, you still have youth that are engaged in a really incredibly creative way to be able to build on some ideas that have taken place elsewhere. And so I think that on the service and technology side, whether it's ride sharing or sort of other innovations that are happening without the region, on the larger scale front, I mean, energy is certainly going to be, I think, an area where there's a lot of ongoing innovation and across the board, sort of in all aspects of that, not just in sort of the transport sector, but in the sort of residential and large scale, the innovations on battery storage opportunities and how that's going to evolve over the region, I think is something that, assuming I live somewhere within my life expectancy, that I will certainly see in my lifetime.
That's great, thanks. Another question. So, and this goes to the cultural differences and similarities between U.S. businessmen and women and Latin American and Caribbean businessmen and women. What are some of the ways that U.S. businesses think and act differently than Latin American businesses, and how can that play to a partnership's advantage or disadvantage in your experience?
I can start with that. I mean, I think, I think the differences or the styles or the cultural differences, I mean, Fabrizio talks a little bit about the integration between the U.S. and the region. I mean, I think, every day there is so much that is more similar than it is different. I mean, I joke that I have a colleague on the board who who will remain nameless, but he's not originally from the United States. He's not a citizen of the United States. Yet when I want to buy Girl Scout cookies every year, his daughter is the only person I know who sells Girl Scout cookies, and she does so with tremendous enthusiasm. And he, as any proud father who's ever sold Girl Scout cookies, promotes them with the spirit of any American father that has sort of began in this tradition. So my joke is, I'm now buying Girl Scout cookies from someone in Latin America, and there are many examples of that, whereby culturally and interpersonally, I think, the divisions are smaller and smaller every day. The other aspect of this bank, as I came in as the sort of gringo among a group of Latins, I figured that, I'd be waiting for meetings to start, and I'd be sort of with a little bit more executive disposition to see things happening in an organized way. And I'll say I'm often the late person to the meeting. I mean, I think things happen here in a very systematic way. So I think from the stereotypes around how business is done, I think the divisions there are decreasing significantly. But this sense of this trust, kind of the social capital piece that's always been, in my view, a real benefit in the region. The relationships and the time to take to get to know people and to sort of exchange an interpersonal dynamic. I think that's a very positive aspect of the region that the U.S. businesses can continue to learn from, and hopefully will continue to learn from. And we'll be incorporating those kinds of, if you want to call it a kind of a cultural element of doing business, that's fine. But I think the integration is the direction where we're going very quickly. I think in 10 or 20 years, we won't even know how to answer that question because it will be so foreign to us, because it'll be such an integrated dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great answer, Mark. Nothing to add. We think the similarities are much more intense and striking than the differences. And the U.S., as I said, as we said before, it's the second Spanish-speaking country in the world. So, Miami, they say it's like the capital of Latin America. So I think really the similarities are much more profound. The interpersonal dimension, very important for U.S. companies. Of course, you can meet through Connect Americas, you can video conference through Connect Americas or through other media, but make that trip to the region. It will be very much appreciated. People will be very nice, very welcoming, and that dimension, we value that face-to-face encounter, the interpersonal relationships.
Thanks. I have one about Connect Americas and the way it's advertising procurement opportunities with the IDB. If you can talk more about the public procurement side of that and explain people how they can access these opportunities and how can the U.S. office at the bank help them.
Yeah, I think, Adi, you should answer that question, the detail of that. But
I'm following the questions of people on Facebook.
Okay, we're updating the publication of procurement announcements from the bank on a daily basis. You go to the site and you look for business opportunities, and then to the left of the site, you're going to see who's publishing those opportunities, where those opportunities emanate from, and those can be from private companies, and those can be from IDB funded programs, and those can be from governments. They're going to start being from governments directly, not only IDB funded projects. So that's how you access those opportunities. You will access a brief description of those, and you can send an email directly through Connect Americas to express your interest, which we'll be following up.
Unless you have more points to add, I think we read all the questions from the people. This will be recorded live and transmitted through the other networks and communities within Connect Americas. So thank you both. Both addresses and contact information are in the PowerPoints, but we wanted to thank you so much and thank everyone who've been watching and listening to this webinar, and let you know that we're here to help. So I'll let you close with that.
Great. Well, I'll just close by saying thank you for your interest. It's great to have so many people on in the region, and we look forward to staying very much in touch and continuing to do anything like this. And so if you have any more interest or any more needs from our office, feel free to reach out. The address is in the PowerPoints, and we will do everything we can to respond right away. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and to the U.S. office here at the bank for also organizing, taking this initiative. And we welcome you in Connect Americas. Please contact us if you have any questions, and make lots of deals. Come to the region. We're waiting for you. Thank you.